Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Change Your Mind podcast. I'm your host, Kris Ashley. I'm really excited for my guest today. We're going to talk all about, if you are an artist, how to increase your income 5 to 6-fold, which I'm really excited to learn about. So before we jump into that, a couple quick announcements. Please check out the links in the show notes. I have a free workshop that I give every couple weeks. Come join me, learn how to get rid of debilitating emotional stress in your life. There's also links to my book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. It's been endorsed by 3 experts from The Secret, John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, Anita Moorjani. And you'll also have links to my courses, my coaching. Come join me. Come join the community. All right. So with me today, I have Samantha Kaplan. Samantha is a professional artist on a mission to create a world for artists and creators where it's normal for them to pursue their craft as a full-time business, knowing that they can achieve millions of dollars doing so. Her journey started when she went out into the world, starting a business with her art, discovering that most artists in art business programs were barely making any significant income that was life-changing. And to her, that didn't sit right. She believes that when artists are able to expand their minds of what's possible for them, create solid luxury brands that support the type of clients and collectors they want to attract, and effectively put those brands into action, the world is their oyster. There's no limit to how much money they can create. So welcome, Samantha.
Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited. We've had a few episodes about mindset and business, but not specifically about artists. And I think I'm imagining what you're going to teach us today can extend to any number of types of businesses. So if you're listening and you're like, I'm not an artist, don't skip this one.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say it really applies to any creative business because it's like there's a few different things with as an artist, but as a creative business, the same principles apply.
Yeah. So I like to start all my episodes the same way, and that is by asking my guests to tell me their origin story. So what is it that put you on this path and made you decide that this is what you want to do with your life?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Well, I graduated from college around December 2015. I pursued 2 degrees, and my college experience, like you hear people who have this like their college experience is like the best experience of their lives. That was not the case for me. I worked all day, every day, like till 3, 4, 5 a.m. Like that was my life. And I was also dealing with like this. My parents were going through this crazy toxic divorce while I was going through all that. So it was just college for me was just this one major emotional roller coaster of just trying to survive and figure things out as like try to put emotions aside, which is not an easy thing to do, and do all and just do. And when I graduated, I just was like, it was kind of funny. I remember last semester in college, I could like barely say full sentences because I was like that burned out. And I just realized like there has to be an easier way. Like life can't be this hard all the time. This can't be it. And I think a lot of people reach that like, I don't know, in the quarter life crisis or midlife crisis. I reached that at like age 22, where it was like there had to be a better way. And I kind of, because I made such like I pursued a BFA in drawing and painting, and I pursued a BA in theater arts, and because I spent so many hours, like tens upon tens of thousands of hours, like perfecting my craft, I wasn't okay with like just doing all this work and then giving it up. Because you see a lot of people who go to art school and that's what happens. And it's really sad, but it's just the world we live in because art school doesn't prepare you to really make a living or create a business or a career out of it. They say like, try to get in galleries, apply to a few things and good luck. But that's all they really give you in terms of career development in terms of that. So what was very interesting for me was when I was graduated, that was like around December 2015. And around the time there was just the beginning of Facebook ads. Facebook ads weren't like what Facebook ads were today. And so it was kind of like, it almost felt as organic as blog posts were or how pages used to be. And there was this one ad about this one artist who made 100K selling her work. And that was very interesting to me because it was like not stuff you heard about back then. So I remember hearing her story and learning about her. And I didn't end up working with her, which I think ended up being a blessing in disguise because she wasn't the right person for me. But hearing her story showed me, oh, it's possible. Oh, there's a path. And what I really learned about her the most was this idea of entrepreneurship, that you could become an entrepreneur as an artist. So I took that and ran with it and really learned all I could have learned about art business and entrepreneurship. And I joined several art business platforms, art business programs. And this is kind of where I started seeing that gap. where it was like you were just seeing people do it. Like you have these people who would sell you into these things, and then you're in it, and you're like, why is anyone barely winning here? Like it was one of those things that just didn't make sense to me. And when I was doing that, I was also, of course, seeing ads from other entrepreneurs and seeing other things and seeing other ways you could drive traffic, or, all the different things you see when you're starting a business and you're introduced to all this new information. And what was very interesting is like I was being introduced to people like Melissa Griffin, Lewis Howes, and then all the people that Lewis Howes interviews on his podcast. And it really started to shift how I think. It made me realize like, oh, like everything I was taught that I thought was true actually isn't. And it really allowed me to really start seeing like, wow, there's this interesting thing. I see that all these other entrepreneurs, like they're going out there, they're building 7, 8, 9-figure businesses and beyond. And you barely see that in the art business space. And I was like, why is there this gap? What is that missing link? And that kind of led me on this journey to really discovering what it was. Because it wasn't I just didn't feel like something didn't feel right. The fact that, like, first of all, with the law of advice I was being given, it just didn't feel in alignment. I was like, knew there had to be a better way. And just seeing that there were so few artists really winning. And if you did see a few win, you were like, well, it just seemed like, well, they just got lucky, or they just got a lucky break. Like, why isn't it that everyone's winning? So it became my mission to really discover that and go after that, really be the one that makes that shift.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all that. I actually went to art school as well. I got my undergrad in creative writing and my master's in fine art and creative writing as well. So I saw a lot of that happening in the fiction and nonfiction writing realm as well. And I like that you touched on, you can be an entrepreneur and an artist, but they're two different skills, right? Creative skills are so different than the skills you need to run a business. So you just need to learn those skills, right? And you mentioned a missing link. So what was that missing link that you found?
So the two big things that I found, it's like an internal and external thing. So it's like, and I know this because you talk a lot about the internal work. So there's the internal work in terms of identity, and there's the external work in terms of branding and how you're positioning yourself. And they kind of go hand in hand. It's like you could establish this incredible brand, but if you don't step into it, nothing's happening with it. If you don't step in to become the leader for it, if you don't get out of your own way, if you don't heal, I don't know the fancy way, heal your shit. If you don't heal that stuff, it's going to be following you along. And I think this is where a lot of artists, because we as artists, more often than not, are empaths. Like we take on energy. That's what allows us to create our work. It's like we don't realize how our limiting identities of ourselves are actually limiting the income that most artists bring in.
Yeah. So how do you get someone to heal all of that stuff, to get rid of that story that they've been telling themselves?
Well, the first thing I think is really helpful for them is like immersing. First of all, getting them excited about a goal. Like what is it that you would love? Like that's the first thing. What is it that you love? Some people say like I love 10K a month. It's kind of funny. I have a program called the Achieve the Impossible Club, and I asked my students yesterday, like, okay, what's your monthly goal? And everyone, like you saw everything, the spectrum from like 5K a month to like 300K a month. Like you saw every number. And I'm like, okay, great. What can you do to align to that goal? And start aligning to it and start noticing as you're trying to align to it, what's everything that's coming up that's preventing you from aligning to it? Because that's showing you that's all your stuff that's preventing you from aligning to manifest, to create that goal, to receive that goal. So that's usually the first step I take. And I think another thing is really immersing people in an environment with other people on the same path, like who are on the same journey of wanting to create this, even if everyone's creating something a little different. Being in I'm sure you know this, being community, it's like life-changing, especially community people who are on a path to do something extraordinary. If you're around people who aren't on that path, it's a hard journey because you constantly have to you'll be around people and you constantly have to shift your mind and get your mind back recalibrated to where it is you're going.
Yeah, totally. I think I just recorded another podcast episode right before this, and it was all about mindset and business. So it kind of was funny that you both fell on the same day, but we were just talking about the same kind of thing, like have a mentor, be in a group coaching program, because immersing yourself, you are the culmination of the 5 people you spend the most time around. Right. So if you can surround yourself with other people who are on a similar path, who have that growth mindset and who can motivate and inspire you, then, and work with a mentor or a coach who's already walked the path, right? They've already done the thing. It's going to get you so much more ahead. So you were talking about artists aligning with that goal. So if someone comes in and they're brand new and they're like, I want to make 300K a month,
Yeah.
how do you start to get them to align to that goal?
Well, there's a few things. So it's like, okay, it's what you actually want. And then let's actually look at the physical, the tangible things. Like one of the fun things I've been working on lately, and I got this idea actually from Bob Proctor, who I'm sure you're very familiar with.
Or
And I really started challenging them. I was like, okay, if you're going to create $100,000 week, what would that look like? And it's one of my favorite things to do with clients because it's so fun. Because when people actually look at like, oh, what do they have right at their fingertips? They'll realize like they have so much right at their fingertips that they're just ignoring. They're not even using because they have all these limiting beliefs of why they can't do that, or they have all these blocks why they can't do that. And when you actually simplify it and get over your money stuff, because I think almost everyone, unless they like just weren't raised around it, everyone has some kind of money stuff. So when you get over that and you can realize, just break it down and realize how simple it is. It's like, oh, here's the path. Now we have the path. Let's just align to it. Let's see ourselves with it and then take action from that place.
so give me a couple examples of something that might be right at someone's fingertips that they're not even seeing because of their money story.
Yeah, so I'll give an example with a client. And I had a one-on-one with her about like a week or two ago. And we like basically mapped out what her luxury brand is and all the details of that. And then we're like, okay, let's look at like what your $100,000 week would look like. And she's someone who, she does really cool art of these animals. And she gets people like really passionate about like wolves and things that most people aren't passionate about. Because she just shares with them like their impact on the world and what they do. And it's like, she's able to get people who don't care about that stuff all of a sudden to care about it. And what we end up discovering, she has a network of people who are like millionaires and billionaires that she's just connected with in the past from other work she's done in other businesses. And they actually really resonate with the work she does. Like the work she does like really empowers them. And I was like, you have this entire network where they don't even have to check with their partners about spending $10,000 or $20,000 on a painting. Like it's like that's where they are financially. I was like, what if you put together an event, like do it, of course, make it a really extraordinary customized experience. That like, because customization as an artist, you're in the customization business. That's really important to understand, especially when you're selling high ticket. But create this extraordinary customized experience, customized to each person, invite them all to this one event where they feel so taken care of, and create an opportunity where send things to them beforehand, like getting them excited for the event, create a customized checkout page for each of them, and then share whatever it is you feel called to share that's going to serve them in that event. And from that one night, that could create a $300,000 night if she successfully implements everything. Because it's like, oh, you had this right at your fingertips, but you weren't not using it.
Yeah, totally. And I think like going through your contacts is so important, right? Because it's like you might have email lists that you've been building, you have your social media network, you have your own friends and family, and so when you start out, those are the kind of people you want to tap into, right? So what do you tell people when they're like, oh, I don't have the capital to put that kind of event together?
Well, this is a virtual event, so it's really not much capital.
Okay.
We're not talking about a lot of capital beyond maybe just a few website things if you need to like prepare some like with a developer. But besides that, we're not talking about like major capital. So that's not really the big thing there. I think the biggest objection I probably see more often where people would be like, well, I don't have that network. It's like, well, what do you have? What do you have right at your fingertips that you're not using? Like with another client, we started mapping out like, what would it look like? So she was the first person I played with this idea with. We ended up mapping out an offer that she could charge $70,000 for. But it's like, but she just never made the offer and just never introduced it to her audience. It's like, we all have these things, and for each person it looks different. So it's hard to say like, oh, for this way, this is the one way it's going to be done for everyone. That's never the case. But each of us have these things right at our fingertips. And it's like, there's easy ways for us to do it. We just don't even allow ourselves to see it.
Totally. So what about, I think a lot of people would hear like, oh, you want me to create a $70,000 offer? Like, I can't do that. And then they have all their stuff comes up, right? Like, I'm not worthy of that, or don't have enough experience, or whatever it is that they're coming up with. How do you help someone break free of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, there is something where you do have to feel confident in what you're selling. Like there is something like, okay, if you don't have experience, like get experience, like build your skill set. I'd say more often than not, like if it is really a legitimate skill set issue, then like, okay, then go work on that. Like just as we all want to perfect our craft, work on your craft. But if it's really just a mindset issue, it's like, well, if you have an extraordinary skill set, then it's just working on yourself and shifting how you see you. Because many times you see so many talented people in the world who have so much potential. You're like, why aren't they doing everything they're capable of doing? And someone who's like a go-getter, it's really frustrating to watch because you're like, you know what they're capable of. And more often than not, that's what I feel is more often the case, is people just have so many limiting beliefs about themselves that they end up holding themselves back.
Yeah, and then on the flip side, there's those people who don't have nearly as much skill, but
Yeah.
they're out there
Yeah.
really successful because they believe in themselves. They have that mindset.
Yeah.
All right. So, how do you help someone price something? Where does that come from?
That's such a good question. And for each person, like I used to use pricing formulas. I don't use them as much these days. I've kind of changed my philosophy on pricing since I've been on this journey. But usually I start out by like, okay, how much money would you love to make for something? Because it's like, well, let's go to what you would love. Because I feel like that's the best place to start, because at least we have a direction of where you want to go. And if they're like, okay, I would love to sell this for 5,000, I love to sell this for 10,000. It's like, okay, great. Do you feel like it's worth that now? And if the answer is no, this is where I say like, okay, maybe we have to do a few things to amp up your skill set or make it a better painting. And maybe there's a few critique things we could do to help you with that. But so often that's the first place where it's like, okay, if it's not that, what do we need to do that? But if it is that, okay, then which beliefs do you need to shift to be confident to sell that at that price? And usually that's more of it. Like sometimes it's like, okay, this painting could be better, and let's support you in making that, working with space and composition and just all the different things that comes with creating a really great painting or a really great piece of art. But let's look at, okay, what shifts, once you have that down, what shifts you need to make within you to feel confident to sell at that price point? And then another thing is, are you positioning yourself to sell at that price point? This is where I think branding is really important. Establishing yourself as a luxury brand is really important, especially as an artist.
Yeah. So, what kind of shifts do people usually need to make?
It's usually, it's just permission. And it's really, it sounds so silly and so simple, but many times it's like, they're like, oh, I like to do that. I'm like, okay, go do it. And then they do it. And once I feel like someone's given permission to do it, all of a sudden they go out and do it and they sell at that new price point. So more, it's just it's all goes back to like the confidence and their belief in themselves, and someone to be like, yeah, your work is worth that price point. Yeah, go sell at this price point. And once they have the confidence in that, they then also are attracting the right people who are happy to pay those prices.
Yeah, it's funny how sometimes we need that outside person to be like, it's okay to do this, which is also why working with a coach or a mentor is such a great idea to help
Yeah.
build your confidence.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you position yourself as a luxury brand?
Yeah, so there's I've been developing this whole kind of formula and system with how you do it, but there's several key components that are involved in it. Like the first thing is knowing, what is it that you're building? That's the first thing, and it's so simple, but most people don't even, if you ask most artists what is your building, most of them can't even give you like a 2-word or 5-word answer. Like they don't even know. They're just kind of like puzzled. They're like, I don't know, like some extra income. I'm like, well, that's not going to build a luxury brand and business. Like you need to have clarity. Like intention, I say it's so simple, but it's the first thing. What is it that you're building? Once you know what it is you're building, it's like, okay, I want to create this extraordinary, I'm just going to throw it out there. I want to create this extraordinary multi-million-dollar business that's meant to help spiritual entrepreneurs. Like, let's say that's your niche. Not saying it is, but let's say it is, for example. Okay, great. Okay, what is the world? What is the frequency of that brand? This was actually a concept I learned from Jeffrey Perlman, who's the founder of Zumba. And I love this idea because we talk about frequency in the like manifestation space, but it's like, think about your brand has a frequency. Your brand has a feeling that when people interact with your brand, like there's a certain feeling. And as a luxury brand, you want to establish what that feeling is. Because if you're very clear what that feeling is and you make sure that permeates through everything that you do, it's way more likely that your people are going to experience the feeling that you set the intention for them to experience. So that's the second piece. And then the third piece I often look at, it's like, okay, well, what is that world? What's the world of your brand? Like who lives in that world? It's like, I like to compare it to like, I don't know if you were familiar with like theater, but like the world of the play. And it's like, and when in the world of the play, there's only certain sets that exist. There's only certain environments, there's certain costumes, there's certain people, there's only certain people that could live in that world. Well, in your business and your brand, what is that world for your business and your brand? And the fun thing is you get to create that world. You get to decide what that world looks like. You get to decide who hangs out in that world. You get to decide what's the experience of that world. What's like another analogy to use, like if your brand had a planet, what would that planet look like? Who would live there? What would it feel like? What would be the different offers in that planet? So I like to look at that. And then we look at like brand personality, and we look at the brand mission and the values and just the offers and all the other, I'm trying to think of like all the, because I've been putting all this together and like in a document and program and stuff, but all these different pieces of what's really going to allow you to stand out.
Yeah, and as someone who has a background in digital marketing, I'm tracking you for sure. So here's my question. And I love the idea of so often we hear of like create your perfect avatar,
Yeah.
and you're making it more of a kind of a fun imaginary like creative thing, which works well with your artists about create your own world and who are the people in it. So then once you do that, how do you reach those people in that world?
Well, I think once you know who those people are, because like ideal client, that's a huge piece in it. Because the way I talk about branding, it's like the marriage of like, okay, this is your mission, this is your calling, this is what you're here meant to do. And these are your ideal clients, and they have to come together. It's not like only your world or only their world. That's how they come together. It's designing something that works for both of you. So I think it's like, understand like who are these people that I could serve better than anyone else. I actually heard this term and I learned it from Regan Hillier, and I think between her and Mind Valley, I don't know who coined it first, but this idea of your soulmate client and collector. And I love that concept because it means like the people you could serve better than anyone else in this world. And I just love that concept because it kind of takes the whole idea of competition. Like there's no need for competition when you could just accept, oh, I have people that I could serve better than anyone else. And so do these people as well. There's room for there's enough for everyone. But understanding, okay, who are these people? And then where do they hang out? Like, where do they hang out? Online and offline. How can I get in front of them? Who already has that audience? How do I need to speak to them for them to care? Because that's the thing. You have to give your people a reason to care. You have to give your people a reason to pay attention. Otherwise, they won't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think putting yourself out there is so important, right? Trying to get in front of all of those people and creating a presence online and offline, right? So going to networking events and creating all the content, right?
Yeah.
So how you've thrown out some pretty big numbers to me when we had previous conversations.
Yeah.
How much do you multiply your clients' income by?
So we've seen things as big and as fast as like 5 to 6 times in a month in 30 days. And I'll tell you, most of the work is related to internal work. I mean, some of it's external, like there's a few shifts like in pricing. The first thing I have clients do is like increase your prices, because more often than not, most artists end up undercharging. I don't think there's any artist client I've worked with where I said your prices are too high. I don't think I've come across that artist yet, but never say never. But for most of them, they're undercharging. And it's like they want to hit these goals, but based on their prices, it makes it so hard for them to ever get to those goals. Like their prices are literally keeping them stuck where they are year after year. So the first thing is like, okay, let's increase your prices. Now we've increased your prices. Okay, many times, it's really funny. I think of like 2 people that pop up in my mind instantly. Like we didn't even really create a plan for those 2 people. It was just kind of like we set a goal, this is what we're going to do, and it was just so much of just getting them in alignment with that goal, with that vision, and getting them into a place where they just knew was going to happen. And with the first client, it was like literally like magic. The best way I could describe it was like after she signed up to work with me, it was like within 20 to 48 hours, she had a sale on her website from someone she hasn't spoken to in a while. And then she got accepted into this gallery, and then this gallery made one sale here, and then she had another sale on her website, and then she had 2 people who tried to buy the same painting on the same day in a gallery here. It was like all these synchronicities that like we could have never planned, and they literally just kind of fell into her lap. And it was like so much of it was just her shifting her energy. Like this just shows you the power of our energy, of our thoughts, of our beliefs, and just our electromagnetic fields, and just the magic of when you shift what's there, what magic happens in your life. I have another client, and she had a similar story, but it happened differently. As like I said, you never plan how all this stuff is going to happen. Where she made like $20,000, maybe a little over $20,000 a year before in her art business, and then within like 30 days, she had like a $17,500 project like literally fall into her lap. So it's just like quite extraordinary. Like when you shift your energy and start elevating. And what was really funny about her is she at that point hadn't even done a ton of work on her brand, and people were already telling her how she elevated her brand just because she started shifting. She just started shifting how she saw herself. She was just vibrating very differently. So everyone just started perceiving her so much differently, which changed her results.
Yeah, it's really amazing because everything really is energy. So how did you help these people shift their energy within 24 hours to the point where they were making these massive leaps and bounds?
Yeah. So with the first client was really fun. I just got her really excited about the goal, and she just really bought into it. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this. And what I do a lot with my clients, and this kind of actually created one of our programs, is we practice this concept called studying. I don't know if it's something you introduced with your clients, but it's like a big thing that Bob Proctor promoted a lot, this idea of studying, taking time to study every day. And so a lot of it's like, okay, we were studying these texts, whether it was like The Science of Getting Rich or The Power of Awareness, or these different texts. The one book we're studying right now is Darn Easy by Peggy McCall and Brian Proctor, who's Bob Proctor's son, and really studying these concepts and really helping people understand, how can you apply these concepts to your life? Where the blocks are preventing you from embodying these concepts. And when you get to the core of it, it's quite incredible how people immediately start shifting.
Yeah, totally. And I love all those books. And I think it goes back to that idea of community when you're talking about those readings with community, and you get to, it's almost like Bible study in a way. Like that's why people like love it so much, right? Because you're getting to interpret those texts and see how they apply to you, and get feedback from other people and get their thoughts. And I could see how that can really amplify. I like that idea a lot.
Yeah. One thing I want to add, it's also, I think this is a big thing that I want to say, because it's such a subtle thing, but it really makes the difference. It's really was also their willingness to shift.
Yeah.
And there's like the people who are more resistant, it's not going to happen as fast. And I wish I could say it did, but it's like, because there's more blocks in their energy, because it's like they're still so ingrained of this is the way it has to be. I even had a whole discussion with my students today. It was like, our egos, we don't realize how much our egos are running the show. And we just think, like, I used to think ego was like, oh, this person has a big ego because all they did was talk about themselves. And it's like, we don't realize that anything that takes us away from love, or just pure love, pure abundance, pure all the good things in the world, that's our ego. And we don't realize, like, I was literally saying, like, your job is to pry yourself away from that ego, or what your ego says, this is the only way, or this is the only way I know, and open yourself to something that's so much greater. And I think that's so much of the work. It's that willingness to do that allows the magical like manifestations, the magical experiences to happen.
Yeah, totally. I think it's so important, because you can't help someone that's not willing to help. Like someone's not going to change if they're not willing to change. You can't force anyone to change.
I know.
All you can do is show them the path and say, hey, there's another way of thinking and being and doing in this world besides what you've already been doing.
Yeah. And it's teaching people how to get out of their own patterns, which is not an easy, as I'm sure you know, it's not an easy thing to do, because our patterns are strong.
Yeah, and most of them have been in that pattern. That pattern's been around since they were children, right? And it was taught to them at a very young age by someone else's pattern, right? That was very unconscious of their pattern. So, it really takes breaking that cycle and getting over your fears. And, ego can show up as the realist, the cynic, it can show up in all of these different kind of ways. Because ego wants to keep you safe, right? It doesn't want you to leave your comfort zone, because that's where it thinks danger is. But outside of your comfort zone is where the magic happens, right? That's where growth happens.
Exactly. So it's something I've been really even just looking into myself lately, and I've really been studying it within myself and really recognizing, like, how much is it running my life, and then I'm seeing with my clients and people who are like so set in their ways. Like when I say, okay, how can you do this, and they immediately go to like just a default answer, which I know is not going to get them where they want to go, and I'm like, let go of what you know. It will still be there, I promise, but put it aside for a sec and step into a new frequency. Take a step away from the ego, because the ego is trying to be so logical right now, and it keeps recreating what you already know and what you already have. And to get something different, you have to let go of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So how much of what you do is really built around this spiritual and mindset work versus, helping support with marketing and strategy and brand building?
Yeah, I want to say, so it really depends on like what people are immersed in, but I'd say at least 50-50, if not more. It's like, of course, you can't ignore the marketing and the strategy, like, and branding. Like, I obsess over things like that, and it's so important. But that alone, if you're not like, set on the mind, I don't even like the word mindset, because I think it's become such a generalized term.
Totally.
But if you're not set with the mindset, that like aligned piece of what you're creating, this is only going to get you so far. You can only get so far with this. Otherwise, you're going to just keep recreating what you've done before. So I think there's two pieces. Like if you want to master social media algorithms, sure, you could align to something and some miraculous thing could happen. But if you want consistency, it's like, okay, well, learn how to master it. Let's improve your content. Let's figure out how we can improve like those little things. Let's make it more on brand. Let's make sure everything's more consistent. Let's look at what's worked before and how can we create more of that. So like there's that piece as well. And I think that's really important. But if you're not doing this piece from aligned action, it's like it's going to be kind of in this battle of like, I'm doing all these things, but I'm not getting the result I want. And you're wondering why. And it's like, well, you're not in alignment.
So do you think most people who are feeling really stuck in their business, whether it's their business or their art, do you think it's usually a issue with limiting beliefs and mindset and alignment?
I think it's that. I think positioning also. I think it's positioning also what they're doing to grow their business. Because when you ask, well, what are you doing? And they're like, well, I'm doing this, this, and this. And it's like, you could see how they're kind of like, this new thing that I've really realized is like a lot of people build these hobby art businesses that keep them stuck, that are literally designed to keep them stuck. And it's like, well, if you keep doing those same things over and over again, sure, miraculous things could happen. But like, if you want a different result, you need to be doing different things. And those things obviously are probably not going to give you that extraordinary result that you want. So it's like looking at both pieces of the game. Like I do believe there is some strategy that needs to be involved. It's like, okay, if you want to create $100,000 week, you can't be doing the same things you were doing in your hobby art business to create maybe like $1,000 day. Like that's not going to, those same actions are not going to get you that result. So I feel like you need both.
So talk to me more about that, about the positioning. And I'm trying to apply it like, and just think about it in a way that's like a broader reach, but beyond just art. Like what would that look like in a normal business and how can people break out of that?
Yeah, well, I think it's going back to what do you want to be known for? Like, why should someone come to you over someone else? Like that needs to be, in my opinion, that needs to be so obvious. And if you don't know the answer to that, like your business is in trouble because you can't give people a reason of why they should work with you. Not to come from like a competitive standpoint, just understanding what's the value that you bring to the table. And just understanding that and understanding you're building a brand based on that. So I think it's really understanding those key things. Because when you have a clear understanding of that, whether someone decides to work with you or not, that's besides the point. But at least you know this is who you're here to serve. And this is why you could serve them better than anyone else can. And it's that knowing and showing up as that person and position yourself as that person through your content, through your emails, through however you show up online or offline. Like that's such a key part in all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So how much content do you recommend your clients put out every week?
That's such a good question. I mean, of course, the more the better, but of course, like the biggest thing I say is like quality. Like look at what's doing well, look at what's your audience really likes and create more of that. So I recommend at least like I'd say at least 3 pieces of content a week. Because you need to stay relevant. That's a key thing. Like you need to stay relevant and people like, and just choose your platform. Like you could first start one platform, like it may be Facebook, it may be Instagram, it may be TikTok, it may be something else, but choose your platform and then just be consistent on it. And then when you get momentum there and you can get more support, then you could expand to a different platform. But I think I would recommend at least, of course, sometimes life happens and, you can't always, sometimes you just need to pause for a second, but I recommend at least 3 times a week. So you're still visible. So people still, still know what you're about. They could still experience your work. You're still top of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just such an interesting question to ask because there's so many different schools of thought.
Yeah.
The TikTok thing is like, like quality isn't as important. Just get it out, feed the algorithm. Versus like Instagram is a little bit more like, no, we want really quality.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to just like hear what different people recommend too.
But I think what's really fascinating is study what's going viral. Like, I think it's really interesting with content. This is what I do with a lot of my clients. Study what's going viral, study the things that you've done that have gone viral and try to lean into that because that's giving you data. It's like, oh, this is something that people really want. How can I give them more of that?
So smart. And like TikTok is such a great place to do that. You can just look up what the hashtags are trending that week or what who's trending, and you can just see what they're saying and what they're doing, and not to just copy them, but to just get inspiration from it.
Yeah. And another thing from the brand perspective, this is what I've been doing with some clients because some of them got really clear, like this is the look, this is the feeling. It's like, okay, well, find other artists or other people in your space, who've mastered that look and feel because they've maybe just been in the game a little bit longer, and use that as guidance to they've already got it down. You could see what's working from what they've done and use that to inform how you're going to show up to give yourself that like step that's 10 steps ahead in the game.
So what advice do you have for someone who is trying to build their brand, trying to build their business, and they're putting the content online, they're trying to do all the things, but they're feeling stuck, like there's just something that isn't giving, and they've been doing the mindset work, but they're just feeling stuck when it comes to making income?
Yeah, well, I often say talk to someone, talk to someone who knows what they're talking about. Because I think I don't know if you've experienced this, but I think we all reach points where we just feel stuck because we're so in it. And when you're so in something, you can't see what's really going on. Because, like I said, our egos, they have a story. We can't always see when we're so in it. So often I say, like, of course, be around other like-minded business people who like have a business mind and could see the whole picture. And I'd say immerse yourself in different environments, because even like I was at an event in San Antonio early in November, so not long ago, and it was crazy. I went there because I was like desperately just need to be around other entrepreneurs. I was like craving it so much. And I remember I heard one speaker speak on stage, and she said something, and it made me realize it's like I had this thing right at my fingertips all this time, but I couldn't see it because our minds give us excuses of why we can't do that, or why we're not ready for that, or whatever reason. And when you finally get that out of the way, because often if you're in that place, there's probably something that's right in front of you, right at your fingertips, that you're just not doing. That's what I discover more often than not. So if you could discover what that is and then do it, you'll realize you'll start getting that momentum again.
Yeah, totally. I like the idea of talking to someone. I just had a one-on-one with my business coach yesterday, and we were going over my tracking sheet from my webinar sales and everything. And he's like, you're looking at this and thinking, this isn't good enough. I'm looking at this and saying, holy shit, I've never had someone work with me in the personal development realm, like killing it so hard.
Yeah.
And like just hearing that just kind of gave me that like reboot that I needed.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's like we get so stuck in like the numbers or the analytics or whatever it is, whatever metric we're looking at. But to someone else, it might be like, damn, you're doing the damn thing. Like, this is awesome. Like, you are on the track. So, yeah, it's nice to get out of your own head a little bit.
Yeah, and I'd say and I'd recommend, if you could, like, I know it was really hard during COVID because like we were all kind of stuck and trapped in like our homes. But now that the world's opening up and the world's a safer place and you could go more places, and your chances of staying healthy are way higher than they were a few years ago. So I'd say like try to get yourself at different events, be in different rooms, because you'll just see, just when you're around different people, you're hearing different people on stage. Some things may click, some things may not, but all you need is one thing to click. And all of a sudden you could have $1 million thing, like $1 million idea or something that could turn into that, just because you had that one thing that got you out of your head.
It's so true. And sometimes it's not even relevant to your business or your space, right? Like you were saying, even just like going to a personal development event, they might say something that just clicks in a way. And maybe you've heard people say that same thing 500 different times before, but the way that they say it on that exact day with your mood and your whatever, it just opens something in you, and you just have this amazing idea. So I love that advice.
Yeah.
So any other advice you have for listeners that we haven't touched on yet?
Yeah, I'm thinking from the top of my head. I'd say one thing we didn't really talk about, but one thing I would also open to is really try to figure out, like, I think so much of this business, it's way too easy to get into this competition kind of space, and really figure out who could I collaborate with. Because I honestly feel like when I started growing my business, when I was before COVID, like my favorite part to grow was just through networking. I was like, had a blast. And to me, that was so much fun, because it's like, we're not meant to do this on our own. And as entrepreneurs, it is so easy to just be so isolated and like get stuck in our own heads, and not really using like everything we have right at our fingertips, kind of what I was saying before. But find people that you could collaborate with, because honestly, I think collaboration is the funnest way to grow a business.
I love that. And I've been finding that as well, just through doing podcasts. I've been a guest on probably 70 podcasts over the past few months promoting my book. And I've had guests on here, and so many of them, we just clicked so well that now we're collaborating on projects. And it's a way to get in front of each other's audience. It's a way to grow. It's a way to get experience teaching or experience speaking or whatever it is, right?
And it's also,
And yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna say it's also so much fun. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. No, it's okay. No, it's totally fun. And yeah, I don't know. I lost my train of thought a little bit, but like, it's just, like you said, it can be so isolating to just be in your bubble and just be grinding, especially when most of what you do is virtual and you're not going into an office and being around people. So even just collaborating virtually with someone can give you some of that human connection that we need.
Yeah, and we all need it. And honestly, like if you really look at it, it really is the fastest way to grow a business. It's like there's the least amount of effort. Like you're going into a warm audience. Like
Mm,
people is usually when you're collaborating with someone, it's like they're already building you up because it's like you guys are doing each other's favors in a sense. So it's like this beautiful, it's this beautiful synergy that like I feel like just creates win-win-win for everyone. So that's something I'd say, I just want to say, like, open your mind to that, realize that, you know, this idea of competition, it's so easy to buy into it, especially when people are like, oh, I bought this from this person instead of you. It's like, it's so easy to get into that mind of like, shoot, like we do live in this world, like where we think we live in a world of lack. But when you get out of your head, it's like, no, there's enough for everyone. There's a perfect person for everyone at a different time. And just feel like, how can we support each other? Like you have things that you bring to the table that you do better than anyone else. I have things I bring to the table that I do better than anyone else. How can we work together to do that? To serve the world, to serve our audience in the best way possible.
I really love that advice.
Yeah.
That's really great advice. Um, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and
Yes.
explaining all of this and enlightening our listeners. Can you tell people how they can work with you, where they might find you?
Yeah, I'd say the best place, we're currently building our website right now. Like eventually it will be samanthagkaplan.com. That will be the home base. It's currently being built at the moment. So I would say the best place to probably go is artofbusinessseries.com because there you'll get like 20 hours of like free trainings, like dive in, binge watch, you know, learn everything you need to know. That's a great place to start. I'm coming back to Instagram. So when I'm back to Instagram, you can find me as Samantha G. Kaplan or otherwise and on Facebook and our 7-Figure Artists and Creative Entrepreneurs Facebook group.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Samantha. I really appreciated having you on the show. Everyone listening, please like, share, subscribe, and have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you so much.